Hi guys, welcome back to ladensercrotchets. In this tutorial we're going to make this hooded sweater. I made this for a child aged 5 to 6 years. It can actually fit a child with 7 years, but I'll be giving instructions on how to make this in different sizes. The measurements that you're going to need are, the first measurement that you're going to need is the shoulder to shoulder measurement. And this is how you measure the shoulder to shoulder. That is from one shoulder to the other. And for this one, it goes up to 15. I'd actually measured it at 13, but because I'm working the sweater without stretching, there is that allowance that will, there's the allowance of stretching from 13 to 15. Then you're going to need the full length of the sweater. And the full length of my sweater is 16. You're going to need the sleeve length. And you measure the sleeve from the armpits to the wrist, and then you're going to need the wrists, the length of the wrist, the length of the armhole, and the measurements of the hoodie. That is the length of my hoodie is 13, and then you're also going to need the width, and the width is 9. Now, most of these measurements are the measurement that I took plus 2 inches because I was measuring without stretching. And when you measure without stretching, then when you work the sweater, the measurements will increase by 2 inches. So get those measurements and let's get into it. These are the requirements for the sweater. I'm going to be using a medium weight yarn. This is a Kenyan brand. It's called Winter King. It's 100% acrylic and it's a medium weight yarn. Then I'll be using 2 hooks. One of them is bigger, the other one is smaller. So we have the 3.5 millimeters and the 2.5. I'll be using the 3.5 for the main part of the sweater. Then I'll be using the 2.5 for the ribbon. You can use a bigger hook if you want a sweater that is not too tight. If you don't want your stitches to be too tight, but if you want tighter stitches, then I would advise that you go for the 3.5. You can also work with a 2.0 millimeters for the ribbon. So in my case, because I want tighter stitches, I'll be using the 3.5 for the main part, the 2.5 for the ribbon on the sweater. Then you're going to need stitch markers, a pair of scissors, a darning needle, and of course a measuring tape. I'm working my sweater for a 5 to 6 years boy, and these are the measurements that I'm going to use. So you're going to need the shoulder to shoulder measurements. Mine is 13. You can use the shoulder to shoulder measurement or the chest measurement, whichever is bigger than the other. So I'll be using the shoulder to shoulder, which is 13. Then you're going to need the full length of the sweater. You're going to need the armhole length, then the sleeve length, and then when I'm measuring the sleeve length, I measure from the armhole because I realized that when I measure it from the shoulders, from the top part of the shoulders, then the sleeve becomes too long. So I take the measurements from the armhole. Now, if you have the person you're making the sweater for, then I would advise that you take the measurements yourself because different people have different tension on the stitches, and the number of stitches that I might have with the same hook might be different from yours. So take the measurements. Alternatively, you can get the person you're making the sweater for, get the measurements from the sweater and then work with those measurements. There are also a lot of measurement charts online, and you can go on and get them and use them. So this sweater can be customized to any size. You can make it for an adult, a child, and I'll be giving instructions for both a child and an adult. We begin with a slip knot. And then chain 50. If you're making this for an adult, you can chain between 60 to 70, depending on the size of the person you're making. You can even go beyond 70 if you want an oversized sweater. So I'm chaining 50, and this represents the shoulder to shoulder measurements. I have my 50 chains ready, and I'm just going to get the measuring tape. And when you're taking the measurements for the sweater, you do not stretch at all because you don't want the sweater to be tight. You want something that has an allowance. So you measure from one end to the other without stretching. So from this point, 50 is getting me to 12 inches, but when I do the first row, the chain is going to stretch a little bit and it's going to get to 13. To begin row 1, chain, hold the last stitch. This is the last chain, that is, just hold it like this and then chain 1 more, yarn over and insert your hook into that chain that you're holding, yarn over and pull up a loop so that you get 3 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through the 3 loops to complete a half double crochet. Now we're going to place 1 half double crochet into every stitch, into every chain to the end of the row. So yarn over, insert your hook into the next chain, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through the 3 loops on the hook. That's the second half double crochet. Yarn over, insert your hook into the 3rd chain, pull up a loop, pull through the 3. So now continue placing 1 half double crochet into every chain till you get to the end of row 1. At the end of the row, and I'm just placing the last half double crochet, and that is row 1 done. I'm going to measure this to see whether it's stretched out to 13. And as you can see, after the first row, my work is slightly over 13 inches, and that's quite okay. We're going to begin row 2, and we begin row 2 by chaining 1 and turning. Then the stitches are very visible, you can see them. We're going to work into each of those stitches. We start by yarning over, go into the first stitch and place a half double crochet there. Yarn over, go into the next stitch and place a half double crochet, and then place 1 half double crochet into each of those stitches to the end of row 2. I'm coming to the end of the row, and this is the second last stitch, so be very careful not to miss the last stitch, which is not as visible as the others, and it's this one right here. So you're just going to yarn over, insert your hook into that stitch, and then place a half double crochet there. Now chain 1 and turn to begin row 3, and you're going to work row 3 the same way we've worked row 2. We begin in the first stitch with a half double crochet, a half double crochet into the next stitch, and a half double crochet into all the stitches, 1 into each of the stitches, for a total of 50 in my case. If you started with 56, make sure that every row you end with the same number of stitches. So from this point on, I'm just going to repeat row 2 until I get the length of the sweater that I'm working, the full length of the sweater that I want. In my case, I want to work a full length of 16 is the full length of the sweater that I'm working, and 2 inches are represented by the ribbon. So I'll take 16 minus 2 to get 14. So I'll work a total of a number of rows that will give me 14 inches. Then the extra 2 inches will be covered by the ribbon. So just keep working 1 half double crochet into every stitch. At the end of every row, chain 1 and turn, and make sure you work a stitch into all the stitches. The number of chains that you started with should be the number of stitches that you have in every row. So I'll show you one last time how to identify the last stitch. So that stitch that I've just worked is in the last stitch. This right here that you cannot see too well is the last stitch. So right here, do the last stitch there. And that ensures that your edges are straight. To begin the next row, you chain 1 and turn. and then begin in the first stitch. So let me go on, work my back panel. So this is the back panel of the sweater. Let me work the back panel of my sweater, and then I'll come back so that we can continue from there. I'm done with the back panel of my sweater, and in total I've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. 23 times 2, that's 46. I've done a total of 46 rows, which when you measure without stretching is giving me around 14.5. I wanted the full length of my sweater to be 14 plus 2, which gives me 16, and 14.5 is okay. Like I mentioned, you need an allowance in your sweater. You don't want it too tight, you also don't want it too short. If you want a longer sweater, even for the 5-year-old, you can work some more rows. At this point, I'm going to chain 1 and cut off the yarn, then pull the yarn through and fasten, and there we have the back panel done. To work the front panel, you're going to start the same way we've done with the back panel, but then you'll not do a total of the 46 rows. Like in my case, I did 46. So I'll not do 46. Instead, I'll do 40 rows. Then the remaining 6 will be worked differently. For an adult sweater, you'll take the total number of rows that you'll have worked for the back panel minus 10. For a child, it's the total number of rows minus 6. In my case, the total number of rows that I have are 46 minus 6, that gives me 40. So I'll work another piece like this one, but with 40 rows, then I'll come back and show you what to do next. I'm done with the 40 rows of the front panel, and we're going to work this top part differently, like I mentioned before. And to do that, for a child's sweater, you're going to measure out 6 inches. So I'm just going to measure 6 inches without stretching. Then I'll determine the number of stitches that will give me 6 inches. Then if you're working an adult sweater, measure out 8 inches. So 6 for a child, 8 for an adult. So I'll just count the stitches from here. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. So 20 stitches give me 6 inches. So I'm going to take the total number of stitches that I started with, which is 50, minus the 20 that I've just counted, and that will give me 30. Then I'll take the 30 and divide it by 2, and that will give me 15. So I'm going to work 15 stitches on this side. So just chain 1 and turn, then work 15 stitches beginning from here. So this is the first stitch. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. So that's where row 41 will end. Then we're going to chain 1 and turn to begin the next row. We are going to work the 6 rows that were remaining. So this is the first. I'll work the second, the third up to the 6th, and that will get me to 46 rows. At the end of row 2, chain 1 and turn to begin row 3. Then I'll work the 6 rows, then I'll be back once I'm done with the 6 rows. So this is my row 3, which is row 43. Once I get to row 46, we'll work on the other side. I'm done with the 6 rows extension, so I'm just going to chain 1 and cut off the yarn at that point. Then pull through and fasten, then turn the work to the other side. I began the first row of the extension on this side, so you need to begin on a stitch on this side. So from this end, you're going to count the same number of stitches as you did on the other side. So I'll count 15. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and insert my hook into the 15th stitch. Right there, then grab the yarn. And you're going to reconnect at that point. So just slip stitch, then chain 1, yarn over, and go right into that same stitch and work a half double crochet. I'm working over this end to weave it in. So in the next stitch, I'll place a half double crochet into the next stitch and into all the stitches to the end for a total of 15 stitches. Or 15 half double crochets. I'm done with the first row, so I'll do the next 5 rows with the 15 stitches to complete the 46 rows on this other side. I'm done with the 6 rows extension on the other side, and I'm not going to cut off the yarn yet because I'm going to use the yarn to connect the front and the back panel. So this is what we have right now. I'm just going to pull this out. This is the front panel, so what you need to do is get the back panel and hold it with the right side facing you. So this is the right side of my back panel. Then you're going to get your front panel and hold it with the wrong side facing you, or the wrong side on top. So this is the right side of the back panel. Then this is the right side of the front. So the right side should be on the inside because we want to work on the wrong sides. And now we're going to connect these 2 pieces on top, on the shoulder part. So we have 15 stitches right here, and you need to count 15 stitches on the other side. So I'll just put my hook back and chain 1 at the end of that last row. Chain 1, and then you're turning to this side. Put your hook into this very first stitch. Then count 15 stitches, or the number of stitches that you've done. So I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. And then insert your hook into that 15th stitch. And that is the first stitch where we connect the 2 panels together. Then now you're going to grab your yarn and pull it through the 2 stitches so that you have 2 loops on your hook. Then you're going to yarn over and pull through the 2 loops to complete a single crochet. Insert your hook into the next stitch and onto the other stitch on the other side, and connect the 2 stitches with a single crochet. Insert your hook onto the 3rd stitch and the 3rd stitch on the other side, and you're going to attach these stitches like this till you get to the end at this point. Don't forget the last stitch and the last stitch on the other side. Connect the two, chain one, and cut off the yarn. Pull through, fasten. We are done with the connection on that one side. So now this is what we have. We're going to connect the other side. So this will be the wrong side, and this is the right side of the sweater. So now on the other side, we're going to attach from this end. So just put your hook through the first stitch and the first stitch on the other side, then grab your yarn and pull it through. Then chain one, insert your hook into that very first stitch and complete a single crochet. And now as we work on this side, we're going to work over these two ends. So next, the next stitch and the other stitch on the other side, do a single crochet, then connect all the stitches, all the corresponding stitches. After weaving in the ends, this is what we have on the wrong side, and this is the right side. So next we're going to do the sleeves to the sweater. And I've already done one of the sleeves, which is this one right here, which is what we're going to attach at this point. Remember, you need the sleeve length. You also need the length around your wrist, which is the wrist of whoever you're making the sweater for, which is this length right here. For an adult, it should be from 7 inches onwards. It will depend with the size that you're working. Then this is for a child, and I worked up to around 6 inches. Now we start from the wrist part with the ribbon, and remember the ribbon, we are working the ribbon with the 2.5 millimeters or 2 millimeters, whichever you have. And I did a total of 27 rows for a child's sleeve. For an adult, it's going to be around 30. So if you're working the sweater for an adult, work a total of 30 rows of the ribbon. For a child, okay, I would advise that you do an odd number of rows. So you can do 29 or 31 for an adult. Then for a child, I did 27. You can do 27 or 25. 25 will work too, but I'm going to work with 27. So I'll just put this aside, and then I'll show you how to work the sleeve. Grab the 2.5 millimeter hook or the smaller hook, then grab your yarn and begin with a slip knot. Then chain 10. Ten is the standard number for the wristband, regardless of the size that you're working. Then you're going to block off the last chain, which is the 10th chain, and chain one more. Then insert your hook into that 10th chain and do a single crochet. So single crochet, go into the next chain and work a single crochet, work a single crochet into the next chain, a single crochet into the 4th chain, and a single crochet into all the chains until you have a total of 10 single crochets in the first row of the ribbon. In the last chain, and that's our 10th single crochet, chain 1 and turn to begin row 2 of the ribbon. So normally we would work into this stitch right here, but because we want something that is stretchy, we're going to work in the back loop. So into this first stitch, this one right here in the back loop, insert your hook and do a single crochet right there. Insert your hook into the next back loop and do a single crochet into the back loop that follows, which is the third, then the fourth, then into all the back loops apart from the last one. In the last stitch, we're not going to do the back loop, so just do a total of 9 stitches in the back loops. Now in the last stitch, if you are working the back loop, this is where we would go, but we'll be working the both loops at the end. So this is where we're going to work right here. That's where we work the last single crochet into the both loops of that last stitch, and that's the second row done. Chain 1 and turn to begin row 3. We begin in the back loop of the first stitch, work the back loop of the second and all the back loops apart from the last one. So in the last stitch, work the 2 loops. Chain 1, turn to begin row 4, then begin in the back loop of the first stitch, and keep working like this until you have a number of rows that is going to fit all around the wrist. So I'll do my 27 rows, then come back and show you what to do next. I have the 27 rows of the ribbon. Ensure that you have 29, 31, 33, depending on the size of your wrist. Then from this point, we're going to chain 1 and we're going to work on the edge. We have 27 rows, so we're going to work a total of 27 stitches. After chaining 1, you're going to yarn over, insert your hook into this very first row and place a half double crochet there. Then this is the second row, yarn over, place a half double crochet into the second row. Then we have the third row, this point, place the third stitch. The fourth stitch will go into the fourth row right here. Then the fifth will be at this point, then the next row at this point. So basically just make sure that you have 1 stitch for every row, and I'm going to do a total of 27 stitches because I have 27 rows. So what you're ensuring is that you have a stitch right here and a stitch on this. So this is a row in the middle and this is another row. So ensure that you place a stitch into each of the rows. This is my last stitch, and I'm just going to place it into that very last row right here. Then we're going to change from the 2.5 millimeter hook into the other hook, which is a 3.5. After chaining 1 and turning, I'll get my 3.5 then work the second row, beginning in the first stitch with 1 half double crochet, and place 1 half double crochet into all the stitches. So in total I should have 27 stitches by the end of row 2, same as the number of stitches in the first row and the number of rows that you've done in the ribbon. At the end of row 2, chain 1 and turn to begin row 3. And work 1 half double crochet into each stitch for a total of 27 or 29 or 31 or 33 or 35, whatever number of stitches you've started with. I'm done with the 3 rows. Then I'll chain 1 and turn to begin row 4. In row 4, we're going to work an increase in the first stitch and an increase into the last stitch. So that means place a stitch into the first stitch, then place another stitch into that very first stitch. And now you're going to need to get your stitch marker and mark that row at the beginning right there. Then now continue working just 1 half double crochet into the middle stitches. When you get to the last stitch, place 2 half double crochets into that last stitch. So I'm coming to the end of row 4. I'm in the second last stitch. So I have 1 stitch remaining at the end. I'm just going to place 2 half double crochets into that very last stitch. So that's 1 and 2. Now for the next 3 stitches, we're just going to work, for the next 3 rows, we're just going to work 1 stitch into every stitch. I started with 27. After increasing on this side and on the other side, I have 29. So that means row 5, 6, and 7 will have 29 half double crochets. So chain 1 and turn. So we are working 1 half double crochet into the first stitch of row 5, then into all the stitches. So I'll work row 5, 6, and 7 without increasing, and then I'll be back to work row 8. I'm at the end of row 7 and I'm done with the 3 rows with no increase. So to work row 8, we start by increasing at the beginning and then we increase at the end. So chain 1 and turn to begin row 8. Begin with an increase, so 2 stitches into the first stitch. Then you're going to move up the stitch marker to that stitch, to that row where we've just increased. Mark the first stitch of that row. Then work 1 stitch into all the stitches apart from the last one where we're going to work 2. Then this is a pattern that we're going to repeat. So we're going to be increasing in every 4 rows. That means we've increased in row 4 and row 8. The next increase will be in row 12. The next one will be in row 16. The one that follows will be in row 20. So once you increase, the next 3 rows will be rows of no increase. Let me get to the end of my 8th row before I let you continue. But before then, I'll show you the measurements that you need to take as you go along working the sleeve. I'm in the last stitch, and right there I'll place 2 half double crochets to complete row 8, which is an increase row, and then chain 1 and turn to begin row 9, which does not have an increase. So we're going to work row 9 with 1 stitch in every stitch, then row 10 and row 11, and then after that we'll increase in row 12. So let me complete row 9, then I'll show you the measurements that we're going to take as we move along. I'm done with row 9, then I'll do 10, 11, then we'll increase in row 12. But then you're going to need to take the length of the sleeve. So I'll illustrate with this sleeve that I've already worked. While folded into 2 like this, and you measure like this, my sleeve length is 16, which is actually what I was going for. Then the other thing that you need to measure as you go is the armhole. Like I mentioned, my armhole should measure 6.5 inches. Let me measure this while it's straight. So if the armhole is 6.5, this point, this part here should be 6.5 multiplied by 2, which is 13. So this should be 13. If you're working armhole of 7, then it means this should be 14. If you're working an armhole of 18 inches, the 9 inches, then this length right here, as you can see, this part that you'll join to the main part should be double the armhole, and mine is almost 13. If we stretch this out a little bit, it will get me, it's actually at 13, as you can see, it's at 13, and the full length of the sleeve is 16. At this point, I'm at a full length of, let's see, a full length of 5, and the other length that you need to measure is at 9. So I'll keep increasing in every 4 rows until I get this length, until I get to 13. And once I get to 13, I'll stop increasing. If you're working an armhole of 7, you're going to increase until this length right here is 14 or 16 or 17 or 18. The maximum should be 18 because this is the 9 is the standard armhole for the largest for an adult, that is. So I'll keep going, increasing in every 4 rows, and once you get this length, you stop increasing, and then from that point until you get the full length of your sleeve, you'll only be working the same number of stitches. So I'll chain 1 and begin row 10. 1 stitch into every stitch, then at the end I'll chain 1 and turn and work row 11 with just 1 stitch in every stitch. Then row 12, there'll be an increase in the beginning and an increase at the end. So keep going till you get your measurements. I'll be back and I'll give you details of mine, details on the sleeve that I'll have worked. I'm done with the sleeve and I've done a total of 42 rows. My last increase was in row 36. Let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, the last increase was in row 36. So from row 38 to row 42, I did the same number of stitches. And this gives me a full length of 16, which is exactly what I was going for. And this part that goes to the armhole is 13. So I have my sleeves ready and I'm just going to attach them to the panels, to the front and the back panel, before I do the hoodie part of the sweater. So I have the 2 sleeves right here. Now I'll just get the main part of the sweater. Make sure that I'm on the wrong side. This is the wrong side. Then I'll hold my work like this. I haven't cut off the yarn on the last sleeve. Then I'm going to attach one sleeve right here, and then the other one will come to the other side right there. So what you need to do is get the sleeve and count the stitches. It should be an odd number of stitches so that you have a middle stitch. Then I'll just remove this stitch marker that I have and then mark the middle stitch on the sleeve. You need to count the stitches. Make sure that you're dividing it into half. So let me count mine and then come back. I have the middle stitch right here, and I'm just going to get this point, connect it to the part where I joined the two panels. At that part of joining, right there. Then I'll get the measuring tape and I'll measure out 6.5 inches on the front panel. 6.5 from the middle part, from the shoulder part. 6.5 is right here. Let me see, that's a total of, counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. 20 rows. Then I'm just holding that part and getting the end of the sleeve on one side and connect it to that point right there. Then I'll go to the other side and count 10 stitches. Not 10, but 20 rows. 20 rows on the back panel. So again, I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So this is the point I'll start joining. Now I'll get my hook. Insert it back into this point where I ended with the sleeve and chain 1. Turn my work like this. Begin from the first stitch on the sleeve, then connect it with the row on the back panel. Hold my work like this. Then I'll start working single crochets to connect the sleeve and the back panel. I'll just get another stitch marker and mark this middle part. I just want to ensure that the rows and the stitches are well aligned so that the sweater is joined perfectly. So this middle part, mark it, then start working the single crochets now. Ensure you're working on the wrong side. Then I'll go into the next stitch and onto a row on the other side and just work single crochet. just to connect the sleeve and the main part of the sweater. Once I get to the stitch marker, I'll pull it out and continue working the single crochets. Once you get to the stitch marker, just pull it out. Then we're going to use it for the middle part on the other side. Then ensure that this middle stitch goes to the point where we joined the front and the back panel on the shoulders. So join those two parts together with a single crochet. Then now continue working the single crochets till you get to the last stitch, to the last stitch marker right here. Pull out the stitch marker and keep going to the last stitch marker. At the end, I'll just pull out the stitch marker and connect that stitch with the last row right there. Then chain. After chaining one, you're going to cut off the yarn. Then pull the yarn through and fasten. And that sleeve is attached. It's in place. So this is what we're going to have. Next, we're going to go to the other side and attach the other sleeve the same way. So just hold in the work like this. Get the other sleeve and determine the middle stitch, connect it, and then attach. I'll attach this other sleeve off camera, then I'll be back once I'm done with the two sleeves. This right here is what I have after attaching the two sleeves. Like that. I'm on the right side, and before I attach the sides of the sleeves, I'm going to work the front pocket, attach it, and then I'll attach the sides. So we're going to work a pocket right here. And to work the pocket, you're going to take the total number of stitches that you did right here minus 10. I did 50, so for the pocket, I'll work with 40 stitches. So just grab the yarn and start with a slip knot, then chain 40. I have my 40 chains, and this is going to go right there. Next, block off the last chain by holding it like this, then chain one more, yarn over, go into that chain that you're holding and place a half double crochet, then place one half double crochet into all the chains for a total of 40 stitches. So into the next chain, place one half double crochet and one half double crochet into all the chains. So for this, you're going to work the same way we worked the front and the back panel, and I'm going to work a total of 8 rows, then come back and show you what to do next. So this is row 1. I'll do up to 8 rows. I'm done with the 8 rows, and if you're working an adult sweater, work 10 rows instead of 8. So 8 for a child, 10 for an adult. Next, we're going to start reducing so that we get something that is curved, and the curvy part is where the hand should go through when you're pocketing, that is. So we're going to chain 1 and turn, and we're going to work a reduction at the beginning and a reduction at the end. So to reduce, insert your hook into the first stitch without yarning over and pull up a loop, yarn over, insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop. You're going to get 4 loops on your hook, then you're going to yarn over and pull through all the 4 loops. So we've combined the first and the second stitch together into one. Then we're going to place one half double crochet into all the other stitches until we have 2 stitches remaining. To reduce, I'll yarn over, insert my hook into the second last stitch and grab a loop. Then without yarning over, go into the last stitch and grab a loop, get the 4 loops on the hook, yarn over and pull through all the 4 loops. Chain 1 and turn to begin row 10 or the next row. In the next row, we're also going to start with a reduction. So insert your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, insert your hook, pull up a loop. In the second stitch, yarn over, pull through all the 4. Work all the stitches apart from the last 2 that you're going to combine together. At the end, we have the 2 stitches remaining, so reduce, chain 1 and turn to begin the next row. Start with the reduction and end with the reduction, and you'll keep reducing for a total of 12 rows for a child, and then for an adult, reduce for a total of 12 plus 5, 17. So reduce for 17 rows for an adult, 12 rows for a child. So let me do the reduction, and I'll come back once I'm done with the reductions on both sides, or once I'm done with the 12 rows of reduction. I'm in row 3 of the reduction, so I'll do the 3rd, and then I'll do 9 more to get me to 12. After the reduction, this is what I have. The pocket is ready. I'm just going to do the edging on the curvy part, or on the part that the hand should go through. And I'm just going to count the 8 rows, 1, 2, 3, 4, and mark the 8th row, so that I know where the edging ends. Now from this point, I'll chain 1, then go into that first row, we are working on this curve. So I'm going into the first row and place a single crochet. Then on this gap, place the second single crochet. Then right here, so let me show you, let me do that one more time. So in the first row, we're going to place one single crochet. Into the second row, we're going to place 2 single crochets, 1 and 2. The row that follows will get 1 single crochet. The fourth row will get 2 single crochets. The row that follows will get just 1 single crochet, and then we're going to alternate like this till we get to where the stitch marker is. So that's 1, the next one gets 2, then 1 single crochet into the next row, 2 single crochets into the next, and repeat till you get to the stitch marker. At the stitch marker, place your last single crochet. Then you can pull it out. Then right here, I'm going to chain 1 and cut off the yarn, but then I'll need to leave a long tail that will be able to sew the pocket onto the sweater from this point all the way around to this part. So I'll just leave a long tail. This might be too long. Cut off the yarn and pull the yarn through. Fasten. So this is what I'll use to connect this part up to this point. Now I'll count the 8 rows on the other side. 1, 2, 3, and 4. On the 8th, I'll reattach my yarn there. Then chain 1, place 1 single crochet into that row. I'm working over this end to hide it. Now in the next row, I'll place 2 single crochets, 1 and 2, place 1 single crochet into the next row, 2 single crochets into the next row, 1 single crochet into the row that follows, 2 single crochets into the next, and repeat till you get to the top. At the top, place 1 single crochet. These are 2 actually. These are 2 single crochets at the end. Then at this point, chain 1, cut off the yarn and leave a tail that will attach this upper part to the sweater. So cut off the yarn. I don't need it too long, like that. We have the pocket ready, so I'm going to sew it onto the sweater. So I'll get the sweater and make sure that you're sewing it on the right side, in the front panel on the right side of the sweater. So get this and place it on top, aligning it with this row right here. So you want to ensure that the rows are aligned. Now at the bottom, I'm going to count from this point 8 rows. 1, 2, 3, 4. I actually ended at the wrong point. I should have ended right here after the 8 rows. So I'll just continue with 2 more single crochets till I get to that row. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. So this right here is where I should have ended. And now that means if I'm attaching on this row, I'm counting 8 rows from here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. and then 5 stitches from this side. 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So at this point, that's where I'm going to start attaching, and then count 5 at the bottom. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Get the stitch marker, this corner part of, attach on the 6th stitch. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right here. Then on the other side, you should attach on the 6th stitch. So on the same line, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then on the edge, you're counting 8 rows. 1. Just make sure that you're aligning your rows and stitches well. So this one side is attached. Now we're going to attach at the bottom all the way to this stitch marker. So I'll just turn my work and ensure I get a stitch on this side and a stitch at the bottom. Make sure you're attaching the corresponding stitches, aligning them well. So just go on, attach on that line, then attach on the edge, and I'll meet you once I'm done attaching. I've gotten to the other side, and at this end, I'm just going to work the last stitch. Then I'll do a knot and weave in the end that remains on the inside part, of course. Then cut off the end that remains. Next, we're going to attach the top part. So this is what we have. Now we go on to attach the top. And you just want to ensure that the rows are well aligned. Get the yarn, put it through the needle. The pocket is in place, and now we can connect the sides. So you need to turn your work to the wrong side now. And we're going to need stitch markers. One of them will mark this part on the armpit. So get the armpit part on this side, and on the other side connect them like that. Then you need to ensure that you're aligning all your rows. Now you can connect with single crochets, or you can use the darning needle, whatever works for you. I'm going to attach, or I'm going to connect from the sleeve all the way down to the armpit, all the way to the bottom. And I'll do that on both sides. So let's begin on this side. Now grab your hook, put it through the first stitch on this side, and through the first stitch on the other side. Then get the yarn and pull it through. Then chain one. And as we connect, we're going to work over these two ends. Go into the next stitch on this side and the next stitch on the other side. Connect with a single crochet onto the third stitch, and the third stitch on the other end, single crochet onto the fourth, and the fourth on the other side. Now I'll connect for 10 stitches till I get to the end of the ribbon. So I like to mark just to ensure that I'm aligning my work the right way. And I'm not missing any stitch. So on the rows, I'll put my hook onto this first row on this side and the first row on the other side. Connect them together with one single crochet. The row that follows, we're going to connect with 2 single crochets into the corresponding rows. So 1 and 2 into the third row, and the third row on the other side, connect with only 1 single crochet. Onto the fourth, 2 single crochets into the same row. Into the fifth, 1 single crochet. The row that follows, 2 single crochets onto the same row. And now you're just going to repeat that till you get to the armpit and continue all the way down. I'm done attaching both sleeves, and I've just turned the sweater to the right side. So we only have the hoodie to do. Well, we still have the ribbon at the bottom, but we're first going to do the hoodie, and then we'll attach the hoodie, and finally we're going to do the ribbon at the bottom of the sweater. We're going to do the hoodie in 2 identical pieces, and I've already done one. So this is the starting chain. I started with a chain of 45. If you're working the sweater for an adult, start with a chain of 50. If you're working it for a smaller child, you can start with a chain of 40. And then the number of rows that I did before the reduction are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I did a total of 14 rows with no reduction. That is 14 rows of 45 half double crochets each, or 45 stitches each, and then I reduced for 12. So we have 14 plus 12, and that gives me 26. For an adult, you'll do 20 and then reduce for 15, which will give you 35. If the child is smaller, you'll do 10 and then reduce for 10, which will give you 20. So I'm going to work a total of 26 rows. And I'll begin with a slip knot and a chain of 45 because I'm working this for a child, like I mentioned before. So chain 50 if you're working for an adult, chain 40 if you're working for a child younger than 5 years. Then, as usual, you block off the last chain and chain one more, then place a half double crochet into that first chain and one half double crochet into all the chains. You've already done this, so this should be simple. You're just going to work the 20 rows for an adult, 14 rows if you're working this size. I'm going to work the 14 rows and then I'll be back. If you're working an adult, work the 20 rows, then after the 20 rows, I'll show you how to reduce. This is after the 14 rows and we're going to start working a reduction. So chain one and turn. Then we already know how to reduce, I'm guessing that. So insert your hook into the first stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, insert your hook into the second stitch and pull up a loop, then pull through all the 4 loops. And we're going to reduce on this side alone. So you might need to place a stitch marker on this side so that you know that you're only reducing on one side and the other side remains straight. Then we're going to place one half double crochet into all the stitches to the end of this row. At the end of the row, place the last half double crochet, chain one, turn, then work until you have 2 stitches remaining on this end, and then in the 2 stitches we're going to work a reduction. I'm coming to the end of the second row of reduction and I have the 2 stitches remaining, so I'm going to yarn over, insert my hook into the second last stitch, pull up a loop, insert my hook into the last stitch, pull up a loop, then yarn over and pull through all the 4 loops, chain one and turn. We begin with a reduction. Then work one half double crochet into all the stitches and keep reducing till you have a total of 12 rows of reduction. I'm done with the second panel of the hoodie and I'm just going to cut this off. But first I'll chain one and then cut. Pull through. Once you have your 2 pieces together, you're going to put them together like this with the points of reduction on the same side. Then you're going to attach from this point all the way through the points of reduction, and the hoodie should look like this once it's attached. So beginning from this point, I'll just hold my work like this, put my hook through the first stitch, so this stitch and the first stitch on the other side, then get the yarn and reattach. Then chain one at that point, go back into that same stitch and place a single crochet, into the next stitch and the stitch on the other side, place a single crochet, into the third stitch and the third stitch on the other side, place a single crochet there to connect the fourth and the fourth. So keep attaching the corresponding stitches. As I attach, I'm working over these ends. I'm in the last stitch at the corner, and into that stitch and the corner stitch on the other side, I'll place a single crochet. Then I'll turn to this side on the reduction part, and we're going to be working on the rows. You need to ensure that the rows are well aligned, so I'll just use this stitch marker and align the rows at the corner right here. So I'll go into the first row and the first row on the other side and place a single crochet. I'll place 2 of them, actually 1. Then into the next row, that is where we'll place 2 single crochets. Into the third row, 1 single crochet, 2 single crochets into the next row. As you connect the 2 ends, 1 single crochet into the row that follows, 2 single crochets next, one single crochet into the next row, then 2 single crochets into the row that follows, and keep alternating like this. I'm in the last row I've just joined, so I'll chain 1 and cut the yarn, pull through, fasten. We have the hood ready, so you just turn it like this. There is the hoodie and it's ready to be attached to the sweater. So I'll just get the sweater and we're going to have it on the right side. Count the number of stitches in this back panel and divide it by 2. Then the middle, I have the middle stitch of the back panel marked, and remember we are doing this on the right side of the sweater and also while on the right side of the hoodie. Then we're going to get this point where we've joined and attach that point to the middle part. Then you're going to get the middle part of the front too. Then a stitch after the middle part, you'll get, side are we starting? Yeah, you'll get this end and connect it right here. Then you're going to get another stitch marker and mark the corner part. You just want to align your rows and the stitches such that the alignment is consistent on all sides, so that when you're joining, it looks well joined. Then this part, we're going to attach it onto this, and I'm going to turn my work like this. Actually, I'm supposed to start working from here all the way around. So I'll first work up to this point, then I'll move the stitch markers. I'll mark the corner and the other corner. So you have another corner right here. I'll just make sure that I'm aligning my work well, and then just use single crochets. So from this point, I hope you're getting what I'm doing. So this is the sweater, the hoodie. I'm working on the inside part. I'll get the yarn, then the hook goes into, let me just remove the stitch marker. So we begin on this end of the hoodie and put it into that stitch that we've marked in the middle of the front panel. Then we're going to grab the yarn, pull it through and chain 1. Then go back into that stitch and put a single crochet We are in the second row where we place 2 single crochets. Now here you're just going to work consistent stitches. Make sure that your work is well aligned. You can use the darning needle if working with the hook is a bit complicated for you, because we have rows, and in one part we have rows, another part there is stitches, so it might be unclear. So you can use the yarn needle instead. So just align your work well and work consistent stitches. Make sure that you're not placing too many stitches, and also you're not placing very few stitches. So now, since I'm working on the half double crochet rows, I'm just making sure that I'm placing 1 half double crochet in one row, then 2 half double crochets into the next, while working the stitches on the other side. I've gotten to the middle part, and I'll just pull this stitch marker out and work that part. Then I'm going to bring this end to the beginning where we've started working the hoodie, and mark this point and the stitch after this stitch on the inside, from the inside part. Mark it like that, then get the corner and mark it too. I think it was better to do the hoodie before connecting the pieces, all the pieces. Like, I could have done it before the sleeves, but it's okay, we can still work it this way, only that it becomes very hard to show you what exactly you're supposed to do. But I hope you're getting the point. So you want to ensure that you align this part well. Then get the corner, a stitch marker, and mark the corner part. Then I'll keep working the single crochets to the end. There is no specific formula for joining this. As long as you align your work well, just go on and work and join the hoodie to the main part of the sweater. So I'll just continue working from here. No, I'm recording. No. I said no. What do you want? And I'm telling you that I'm recording. Get out of my room. Mnaenda kulala? So into the last stitch, I'll put my hook through. Then I'll get the inner part. Instead of working right here, I'll work on the inside part of the other side. Just pull through and complete a single crochet, chain 1. Then we're going to do a single crochet edging on the hoodie part. So the hoodie is joined, let me show you. So this is how the hoodie looks like right now. So I want to do an edging all the way around the hoodie, and I'm going to turn my work. Then I've already chained 1. So right here on this gap, the first gap right here, I'm going to put my hook through and do a single crochet. Then I'll go in between the next 2 stitches and place a single crochet right here into the next ones, then into the next gap in between the stitches. Then I'll go on working single crochets in between the stitches all the way around till I come back to this point. Thank you. I'm recording, K. Si utulie nimalize. Na record. Mbona usikiaje wewe? Why can't you be patient? Ukiambiwa mara moja huwezi sikia. Mtu ukitaka kitu lazima kila kitu isimame ndio ufanywe chenye unataka. Wewe huwezi ngoja. Watu wengine ndio wanafaa kungoja, lakini si wewe. Don't sleep there. Kama unasikia usingizi, go to your bed. Umesikia? I'm coming to the end of that row of edging, that very first row. So in the last stitch, I'll just work onto that very first stitch that we did. Then chain 1 and turn. We're going to do the last row of the edging, and we're going to work 1 stitch into every stitch, beginning with the first one right here. Then 1 single crochet into every single crochet from the previous row. So I'll just work all the way around. Once I get to the end in the last stitch, I'll just chain 1 and cut off the yarn. Now we only have the ribbon on the bottom to do. Everything else is in place. So let's do the ribbon at the bottom of the sweater, and you're going to change from the 3.5 millimeter to the 2.5 millimeter crochet hook. We're going to start from this part of joining on one of the corners. Just insert your hook right there. Grab the yarn. I'll begin with a slip knot and pull the yarn through. Then chain 1 and fasten. Now I'm going to chain 9 more for a total of 10. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Then we're going to be working in the back loop. So you're going to chain 1 more and go into this chain, the 10th chain, and do a single crochet. Go into the next chain and do a single crochet. Into the 3rd chain, place a 3rd single crochet. Then you're going to place 1 single crochet into every chain for a total of 10. So that's 3. So 10. Once you get to this point, we're going to work in between the stitches. So in between this stitch and the second one, slip stitch right there. Then go in between the next 2 stitches and do a second slip stitch. Turn your work. Then we're going to work in the back loop of the 10th stitch that we've done. This is the back loop right here. So we're going to work a single crochet right there. Go into the next back loop and work a single crochet. Into the next back loop and work in all the back loops. When you get to the last stitch, we're going to work on the both loops like we did with the wrist, the ribbon on the wrist. I'm in the last stitch And if I were working the back loop, I would work right here, but I want to work the 2 loops, so I'm going to insert my hook at this point and complete a single crochet. Then chain 1 and turn to begin row 3. Again, we work row 3 in the back loops. Begin in the first one right there in the back loop. So for this row, all the stitches will get 1 single crochet into the back loop. Make sure you get your 10 single crochets. Then we're going to go into the next gap. Then into the gap that follows, place another slip stitch. Then turn your work. For row 4, we're going to work 9 single crochets in the next 9 stitches in the back loop. Then the 10th one will be on both loops. Both loops at the end, chain 1 and turn. From this end, you work all the 10 back loops. When you get to this side, you're going to slip stitch twice. So that's once, and into the next gap, the second slip stitch, then turn your work. Then begin on the 10th stitch that you worked, single crochet. Repeat these rows until you've gone all the way around the bottom part of the sweater, and I'll meet you at the end. And turn your work to the inside part. Then you're going to put your hook through the first stitch on one side and the first stitch on the other end. Then grab the yarn and pull it through. Chain 1. We're going to connect the stitches with single crochets. So into that first stitch, actually go into the second stitch on this side and the second stitch on the other side. Connect with a single crochet and connect all the corresponding stitches, the 10 of them. So this is 3. I'm in the last stitch. Once you've joined the last stitch, you're going to chain 1 and cut off the yarn, then weave in the end that remains. So cut off, then pull the yarn through, then get the darning needle and weave the end. Then cut off whatever remains. And there we're done with the sweater. Everything is done. You can attach a drawstring on the hoodie part for drawing it together so that it fits perfectly on the head, or you can leave it like that. So this is what you're going to have. Thank you for sticking around to the end of the tutorial. If you've enjoyed the tutorial, kindly leave a like, comment, share, subscribe if you're not subscribed, and click on the thanks button and leave some appreciation. I'll appreciate it too. See you in the next one. Bye.